Welcome everyone to our 3 p.m. 4th day of August 2020 Weber County Board of Commissioners. Appreciate you attending this meeting with us, either in person or it is Zoomed. I'm Commissioner Gage Froer. I'll be chairing the meeting. To my right, Commissioner Jim Harvey. To my left, Commissioner Scott Jenkins. And the order of business today will be Pledge of Allegiance by Mariko Rollins. Mariko's here. Then we'll go to invocation with Ricky Hatch. And our thought of the day will be Commissioner Jenkins. Mariko, thank you for being here.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our kind Heavenly Father, we come before Thee today grateful for the freedoms we enjoy and for our great country and our fantastic state and county. We are thankful for the citizens who invest so much into making this a better place. And we are thankful to those who are serving in the county, elected officials and employees, and for the sacrifices that they make to help serve the citizens and protect their rights. We ask that today as we meet, that Thy Spirit will attend to us. Please help inspire us in all that we do. And we acknowledge Thy hand in our freedoms and acknowledge Thy governance, and pray that we can align ours with yours. And we say this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Mr. Jenkins.
Thank you very much. You know, this last week was an exceptional week. We had in the county, and I want to give a shout out to our employees. We went out to an open house at the new archery facility out there, both Thursday night and then again Saturday morning. For the general public, they had one. And it was amazing. Saturday morning, there were 3 or 4 vendors there that I was able to talk to, and there's this kid from Colorado that came over. I was sitting talking to him, and that kid says to me, he says, you know, he says, this is like nothing I've ever seen. I says, what do you mean? He says, well, I travel all over the United States doing what I'm doing here. And he says, there's nothing like this. He says, nowhere. He says, I'm telling you. He says, I've even been down to that Eastman building in Salt Lake. And he says, for competition shooting, that's one thing. But he says, for what we're doing here, you're doing, he says, there's nothing like this anywhere that I've ever seen. He says, it's that unique. And he says, you guys have just had a vision here that most people don't know or understand. And he said, I just want to give you a heads up. Well, I kind of want to give our employees an attaboy for what they've done there. Not only that, but we just came back this morning from a field trip we took to Causey Dam. And the Forest Service gave us the okay last week to go up and grub out and flatten that potential parking area. And when the Forest Service gives you the okay like that, you want to jump. You don't want to hiccup. You want to do it so fast before they change their mind. So we called Joe and said, Joe, what can you do here? And he says, well, how about tomorrow morning? I says, well, you can't get up there that fast. And he says, actually, I think I probably could. And I said, you'd really do that? And he said, oh, yeah. He says, I understand what you're saying here, Commissioner. When something like that happens, you got to jump quick. So he says, we'll get right up there. And they did. They got right up there, and we went up there this morning and looked at the extent of their work and what they did. And it was absolutely amazing what they've done up there, how they flattened that out and hauled in road base and put on it, and then went back with the grader and graded it out and finished the edges. It looked wonderful this morning. And so I just wanted to give a shout out to Weber County employees. I tell you, they make things happen. They're ingenious. have not only a lot of self-determination, but they have a lot of creativity. And that is very evident by what Todd did out at the Archery Center. You know, when we started in there, we had envisioned a shooting center indoors, which is what we created. When you look at the outdoors and all the things that he did there and the creativity he used and how we repurposed that walkway so they could shoot in the air and all the different things, it's actually amazing what he has done there and the creativity that he used and his people. I don't want to forget his people, employees. So I just wanted to give a shout out today to the Weber County employees. I'm amazed what some of them have done and the things that have happened, and I'm pretty proud to be part of this organization. This has been a lot of fun.
Thank you for that.
You bet.
You're exactly right. These employees every day go beyond the call of duty to make us all look good and to make the citizens of this county proud. So appreciate that very much. Let's go to public comments. Anybody from the public? I don't see anybody too many people from the public here today. Did we have any Zoom? You monitoring that, Stace? No Zoom comments? Okay.
No Zoom comments.
Great, thank you. Okay, so with that, let's get on with our agenda items. And let's go to the consent items. We're going to start with request for approval of the warrants 2945 through 2954 and 451-217 through 451-348 in the amount of $573,554.98. Request for approval of purchase orders in the amount of $155,551.96. 3, request from the Roads Department to surplus a yellow John Deere S44L4 WD loader. And 4, request to declare parcel number 05086 as surplus real property. Agenda item 5 under consent items we're taking off at the request to put that at following week. So we'll then go to request from Human Resources for approval of policy 53500, which would be nepotism. And 7, request for approval of change order number 2 on the Granite Construction North Ogden Divide for pulverizing of old asphalt. With that, Commissioners, I know Commissioner Jenkins, you had a question on the warrants.
Yeah, I'll let Ricky do his thing and then I'll question him.
Okay, go ahead, Ricky.
Okay, we issued 14 purchase orders this week for $156,000. Just under half that amount, or $70,000, is for the library that will go towards purchasing e-media books as well as some building maintenance. 27%, or $43,000, is for our parks, and that will purchase some yurts. 16%, or $24,000, is for the transfer station, and that will go towards emergency staffing as well as some rubber edging. Then 9%, or $14,000, is for our Golden Spike Event Center, and that is garbage services as well as cleaning supplies. We issued 143 checks this week for $574,000. No major items that took up most of that. It's the largest line item was 17%, or $96,000, which was for Weber Housing Authority, and that's housing assistance payments. And then we had 2 items for 13%, or about $77,000. One was employee dental, vision, and disability insurance, and then another for corridor preservation reimbursement to North Ogden for land purchased on the 450 East project. 7%, we had a couple of items, about $42,000. One was for the 12th Street West construction, and the other was for construction at the archery range, as well as some work done on the Eden Tower and then the parking structure.
Thank you, Ricky. Okay, questions?
Questions I have, Mr. Chair. Normally you can pick these bills out and figure out what they're for, but we have so much going in the county right now, it's hard to figure that out. So on page 4, there's 27,000 Granite Construction Company Road and Highway Special Highway Supplies. Granite is the one that was working on North Ogden Divide, so that's North Ogden, right? Divide?
That's to purchase asphalt, and the system doesn't provide any additional detail on whether that was specifically for North Ogden Divide or if that was just supplies that they're using for general.
Oh, general paving, okay, that's good to know. Next was the 41,000 for night irrigation.
That's the West 12th Street.
That's West 12th Street, so that night irrigation, that was the agreement we made with the folks who wanted to replace their own infrastructure instead of us doing it for them. Okay, I just want to make sure that is what that was. Let's see, there's a couple others here. So, Stacy Enterprises, that 93,000, that's for Andy Beatles and that home. And we gave that out of special funds that we had. Yeah, okay.
Correct.
I just want to make sure of that. That's the way I remember that one. That was it.
That's it?
That was my questions.
All right. Additional questions or comments regarding consent items, Commissioners? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
None. No questions, and with that, Mr. Chair, motion to approve the consent items as presented.
Thank you. We have a motion to approve the consent.
Do we need to strike item 5 for the updates that?
We do. So, yeah, as I read the agenda, item 5 comes off.
So may I, Mr. Chair?
Go ahead. Yeah.
Restate, motion to approve consent items 1 through and inclusive 4, and also 6 and 7.
Got it. All right. And do we have a second on
We
that?
have a second.
We got a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Consent items are approved. Let's go to action items. Action item G1, request for approval of the first reading of an ordinance of Weber County amending certain fees to the Weber County fee ordinance for the ice sheet. Presenter, Mariko Rollins, please come forward. Welcome again.
Hi. I'm seeking approval to list the correct fees for our ice and services so that the ordinance is reflective online. There are no increase to the fees. They're the same fees we've been operating at.
So this is just to make sure that the fees that are advertised online are consistent with what
Correct.
we're charging. Is that correct?
Yep, we will seek an increase next year as the
Right.
economy bounces back, and we feel that it's good for our area.
Good. I'm glad to see the fees stay the same in today's world. Questions, Commissioners?
You know, this is really, if I can, this is really we kind of brush over this, but you know, our fees at the county with regards to utilities, employment cost, insurance, other things are continuing to grow, and for us to maintain fees where they are is really a commitment to the public. This is something that I know that the ice sheet, especially since March and COVID, is not seen the dip in use that other facilities have seen. Mariko, can you speak to that just generally on that?
Yes, so we decided to kind of change tactics early on with COVID, and instead of backing off, we kind of leaned into family recreation and training, and we changed our reservation policy. We have been busier than ever. We've never been busier in a summer than since I've lived in Utah since 2001. So it's excellent to see, but it's also provided area families that haven't skated or trained at our facility to come here and be part of Weber County.
So our costs in maintaining the ice don't go up, because that's a fixed cost, as you well know, Commissioner. But we've been able to, with those extra revenues, been able to make sure that we capture the extra expenses so we didn't have to raise fees. So this is another great example that Culture, Parks, and Recreation, Mariko, you and your team are doing a great job in making sure we keep things affordable at the ice sheet. Thank you for that. And if you're ready, Mr. Chair,
I'm ready.
I'll make a motion that we accept that first reading of ordinance for the fees at the ice sheet.
Got it. Okay. We have a motion.
Second.
And a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion carries. Thanks, Mariko, for being with us. Let's go to G2, request for approval of contract by and between Weber County and the Utah Live Bands to have Drive perform at the 2020 Weber County Unfair. And Mr. Marty Smith will make that presentation. Marty?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, Commissioners.
Good afternoon.
Just seeking approval with a contract between Weber County and the Utah Live Bands for the band Drive, who is the opening act for our Tracy Bird Truck Bed concert at the Unfair this Saturday, August 8th.
Great. So this is the pre-band.
This is, yeah,
Got
for
it.
$4,000.
Okay. Questions, Commissioners?
Great value, and we appreciate you doing that. So what's the ticket pricing structure? How does that work? If people are interested in coming on Saturday night to the truck bed concert, can you give a little more detail?
I can. Truck Bed concert starts at 8 o'clock. It'll be in the west parking lot of the fairgrounds, the Golden Spike Event Center. $200 per vehicle for premium, which is the first 3 rows or so. $125 per vehicle for GA. So that equates to, if you got 5 people, that's $25 a ticket. So it's a pretty great value. And the more people you can safely put in your vehicle in a seatbelt. No motorhomes, however, but otherwise the van, minivan, truck, car.
Pickup trucks?
Pickup trucks.
As long as there's seat belts.
And then you can bring a lawn chair, spread out around your car, be safe, social distancing to the space next to you. Just no pop-up tents or anything, but bring your lawn chairs, sit in the bed of your truck, sit in the ground.
What
Have
a
good
great
time.
creative way to still have some semblance of normalcy in this, and so we appreciate the efforts y'all have made out there for this unfair.
Well, we hope for a great turnout. Tell your friends and your neighbors, and it's going to be a rodeo and in Indian relay races 2 days and the youth rodeo. So a few really great events out there this week, starting tomorrow.
Can you just give us a rundown? So
Sure.
tomorrow night starts the events.
So tomorrow starts the events with the rodeo.
That's a full rodeo.
That's a full rodeo. That's
Okay.
right. That's all the event, rough stock and team roping and everything.
Got it.
Thursday, the youth rodeo.
No, the rodeo is in the outdoor arena.
That's right, in the stadium. Youth also in the stadium. Then Friday, we will have the Indian relays in the evening on the track. Saturday is the junior livestock auction in the morning. And then the Indian relays again at 2 o'clock on the track. And then the truck bed concert in the evening.
Yeah, good.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
When's the junior livestock show, Marty? If there's a sale, then there's a show. When does the junior livestock show take place?
Well, it goes on all week. Judging goes on all week in the shows. And
In the daytime?
in the daytime, every
Great.
day. That's right.
And that'll be, now, that's usually pretty packed in the back of the auction arena. What have you done differently this year?
So this year, because of COVID, of course, we have moved that into the big Golden Spike Arena. So you will be able to come, particularly on Saturday, it gets really packed for the auction, and spread out and be safe and still come and support these Weber County youth, purchase their animals. And I'm sorry I don't know the exact schedule in my head with goats and lambs and sheep and hogs each day, but it goes on all week starting tomorrow. Today was weigh-in, and then the rest of the week are all the shows.
You know, when you have a livestock show, Commissioner, you'd get 200 folks back there, and inside the 6,000-seat Golden Spike Arena, we ought to be able to safely seat 200 or 400 or 800 people in there without a problem and still have social distancing. We've got those big fans in there that keep things a little cooler and keep the sun off them. It'll be a good experience out there. You know, one of the things we learned, Marty, is about cutters. Commissioner Jenkins, we talked a little bit about this yesterday. I know that the meat cutters in the area were really kind to us this year by saying that they would accept the animals from the fair. But normally speaking, would you mind just commenting on that a little bit?
Well, we were just talking about the demand for cutters right now. With COVID and all the meat plants across the country being down, has put an extreme pressure on the local services and meat cutters. And I have a nephew that's in involved in this, and it's put a lot of pressure on him. He's months out on meat cutting and getting things done. And I was just telling the stories to him yesterday, and it's amazing to watch this take place. So the fact that they would take these fair animals is a good deal.
Oh,
we should be very grateful for that.
Thank you. It really is. And so those who have always thought, you know, I wouldn't mind buying a side of beef or, you know, how do I do that? They can show up to the fair, they can buy the animal, and basically it's all taken care of. The next time they see it would be cut and wrapped, and they just have to place it in their freezer. It's not hard. They don't have to do anything. So if people are wanting meat, whether it's a steer or a hog or a lamb or a goat, they can come at 10 o'clock on Saturday morning and purchase an animal and know that they can get it cut before April of next year, which is going to be the case with about any other time. So you're safe at the Junior Livestock Show and sale on Saturday morning at 10, and we hope that people come out and support the youth and buy their animals off the floor at the fair. That'd be great.
That's right. It's an easy process. I've done it myself. As you check out, if you're the winning bidder, you choose where you want to send your animal, and the next thing you do is get a call from the processor. But we have strict protocols in place for cleaning. Guests can be assured they're safe. A lot of sanitizing going on, lots of social distancing, masks are required. So
Great. Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Thank you.
You know,
Marty?
Mr.
Go ahead.
Chair, it should also be mentioned that the quality of these animals is generally considered to be a step above the average, because these are not animals that have been out in ranges or in pastures, or we don't know where they've been. These animals have generally been behind somebody's house with a little boy or a little girl going out there daily, feeding them, watering them, curry-combing them, make sure they're proper and primped and looking like $100 million, because they want to get every cent out of them. So these animals have really been taken care of, and they've been fed properly to the max to put minimum fat and maximum muscle on, so that they look really good for the judges. So this is high quality meat.
Wonderful.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I've purchased animals there over the last several years, and with that exception, everyone has been extraordinary. I mean, just you couldn't ask for better. So, and I wasn't real happy about hearing about the cutters being off till April, but I told a couple of my bison that last night, and they had a smile on their face. So, just got them an extension. So not everybody's unhappy with that.
That's true.
Just want to let you know. Okay. With that, commissioners,
Mr. Chair, I'll make the motion that we approve the contract by and between Weber County and Utah Live Bands to have Drive as the opening act for the Unfair.
thank you for
And
that.
I will second that.
And we got a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion carries. Thanks, Marty. We're looking forward to this. Unusual year for a fair, but actually I'm very excited about these events. And it's going to be great to see everybody that can attend be out there in a safe environment, commissioners. All right, let's move to Memorandum of Understanding between Weber County and the State of Utah Department of Technology Services to allow for installation and use of an Albert sensor to provide additional cybersecurity monitoring to the county. Mr. Ricky Hatch.
Thank you, Commissioners. I'll spare you the long story on this, but in 2017, I began getting involved with on cybersecurity, specifically election cybersecurity on a federal level. And one of the very first things that the group that I helped establish and am a member of, one of the first things we did was encourage states to install what was called an Albert sensor. And Utah actually already had an Albert sensor at the time, and that was part of why Utah in 2016, although it was probed by a lot of entities, did not have any breaches or any problems at that time. It was part because of this Albert sensor. Part of the group that I was with, which works in conjunction with the Department of Homeland Security, we really encouraged installation of these Albert sensors throughout the country. Since then, all 50 states have successfully installed this Albert sensor on their state, behind their state firewalls, and several states, including Florida, New Jersey, Louisiana have actually installed Albert sensors in every county as well. And what these Albert sensors do, they monitor. They're placed on the organization's network, and they collect network data and packet information, and they send that for analysis. That it goes back to the information, the multi-state information ISAC, information something and analysis center. Now I can't even remember what the letters mean, but what they do is they have a center that's 24/7, and they monitor petabytes of data daily from all over the world, and it helps them identify and track malicious data and malware that is being sent into various government agencies throughout in all 50 states and in the territories. And it's a fantastic center, extremely high tech and very important. The government relies on these on this center and these sensors to provide forewarning, or in some cases after the fact, but generally it can identify a pattern, and within minutes their analysts are on it and they're talking with the entities that are impacted. It's a great service. The state of Utah has recently reached an agreement and obtained the funding to provide Albert sensors to every county in Utah, which is it's great news for us. One of the things that we have to do is we have to sign an agreement between the county and the State Department of Technology Services regarding the installation of it, and make sure that everybody is aware of what's required as far as the services are provided, what the county needs to do, what the state needs to do, and then what the ISAC needs to do. Information Sharing and Analysis Center. There we go. Now it just came back to me. Anyway, so that's what this MOU is. It's a very standard, consistent MOU that goes. It's the same for every county in the state that would make use of this sensor. All of this information is confidential and can only be released with our approval. If there were an incident or information that needed to be or wanted to be displayed or discussed, the ISAC would come to us and ask for our permission before they could share that information. So it's all confidential. And with that, I'm open to any questions.
Questions for Ricky?
Commissioners, I had, through the interchange of emails, and when this was introduced to us, I reached out to Matt Mortensen, who I think does a phenomenal job protecting the, what is it, 7,000 to 8,000 hits a day on our network? A minimum of that on our network every day, and boy, he does a great job. But his thoughts on that, and he was very complimentary towards it, so I have a lot of confidence that this particular action would be good for us in Weber County.
Motion to approve G3.
Thank you. We have a motion.
Second.
And we have a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Chair votes aye, motion carries. Thank you, Ricky. So let me just mention that, I think this Albert sensor, I actually oversaw DTS, one of my jobs at the state when I was there. I've got utmost faith in those people, what they do. I mean, the number of hits that they were taking when I left a couple of years ago was just amazing. So it's a good group of people down there, and if they recommend it, especially with state involvement, I think we're headed in the right direction. So, great job, Ricky. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Before we get into the public hearing, I would like to ask Ricky a question.
Go ahead.
So, Ricky, we are having lots of questions hit these days, if you watch any public television, on regards to the vote and our mail-in voting, and in our case, we've been doing it for years. This is nothing new to us. Can you talk a little bit about that and to the security of it in Weber County?
Absolutely, and thank you. I'll try to be done by 6.
Yeah, and I should let people know that Ricky's considered one of the foremost experts in the nation on this. He's actually testified in front of Congress, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So hats off to you, Ricky.
Thank you. Yeah, we're getting a lot of calls, and a lot of this is driven at the national level. And anytime you take an election method or voting, a method of voting, and you try to change it in a dramatic way in a short period of time, it's a challenge for election officials. It happens all the time at a state level, but now this year it's happening at a nationwide level, where a lot of states that have been doing traditional in-person voting have had to, because of the virus, have had to shift to a primarily by-mail focus, and that comes with some speed bumps. Now, in my work with the election officials, and I mentioned this on a radio interview on Friday, of election officials across the country, when we work on something, when we collaborate together, 99% of the time, we don't even know what party the other election official belongs to. We just don't care about that. We care about having secure, proper elections that have integrity and that people can trust the results for, and we all want that. Now, we've heard bad things that have happened in Wisconsin with all the lines, and Georgia with some machines having problems, New York with delayed results. Oddly enough, the headline on July 1st said, primary elections held in Colorado and Utah went without a hitch. And that was about the only thing that was said nationally, because it just happened. It was just normal. In Utah, we've been voting by mail, believe it or not, for 30 years. It's just been very, very small, on a small scale, up until 2012, when the first county decided to do it. In 2013, Weber County was the first large county to conduct a full election by mail. That was our library bond. So we have had 7 years to hone our processes and our controls in Weber County, and we have done that. We have implemented, not just in Weber County, but really in the state of Utah, extensive controls that range from making sure that the voter registration database is clean, so dead people can't vote. For example, non-citizens can't vote; they can't get registered, we have control points throughout the entire process of the election that are able to identify and prevent voter fraud, as so many people are claiming. And many of our controls are solid, and a lot we don't share with others for security reasons. But suffice it to say, we could mail 10 ballots to every single voter in the county, and they could all return all 10 ballots and then try and go and vote in person. We will catch 100% of those, and only the first ballot that is received by the county would be the ballot that is counted. And that's due to a host of controls that we have. In addition, voters have to sign every voter has to sign their return envelope, and we look at every single signature. In the entire state of Utah, every single signature is analyzed and compared. And if it doesn't match, we reach out to the voter. They have a chance to cure that and make sure that their vote is counted. We have a lot of physical controls. We have a lot of cyber controls and process controls, lots of reconciliations to make sure that there are no additional ballots introduced into the stream that haven't gone through the proper signature verification and voter history, and make sure that no ballots have fallen out, that a poll worker or election judge just sees a voter that they know is going to vote the way they don't like. They can't pull that out, because we would catch that in our reconciliation process. So we have just a tremendous amount of control in place. No election system is perfect, but Utah is really an example countrywide of the controls that should be in place. We have done webinars, we've reviewed documents, we've provided testimony to show other election officials across the country how to do it right. And I have confidence that they will work on it. November will be very bumpy nationwide, but in Utah, which I can say with certainty, it will be an election that will work like our elections have worked in the past, controlled, is secure, and full of integrity.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ricky. Great job on elections. Just couldn't say more. Anything else?
Great.
Thank you. Okay, Commissioners, let's go to our public hearing. I'd
Excuse me.
entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, motion
Yes.
to adjourn a public meeting and convene a public hearing.
Thank you.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
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 Votes aye. We're now in a public hearing. Public hearing, first item is discuss amendments to the operating and capital budgets of Weber County for the 2020 calendar year. Mr. Scott Park, welcome.
Well, thank you, Commissioners. I was going to say good morning, but good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So you should have in front of you a summary of adjustments to the 2020 operating and capital budgets. What this is we've made various changes throughout the year. We have to deal with things as they come up, and this year has been especially interesting in dealing with things that have come up. So I just wanted to touch a couple of the highlights on that summary. So in that first section, you're going to see grants and other revenues, and what we're doing is we're asking for permission to receive and spend $11.3 million of CARES Act funding. This is money that's come through from the federal government to the state of Utah, then down to Weber County and the various cities within Weber County. So that's a big thing. We don't normally change the budget by $11.3 million for the whole year, and here we're doing it in one single line item. But that's just due to the extraordinary times that we're in right now. As you scan down that list, you'll see that we've actually received several different grants. We received a CARES Act grant for the library. We've received some grants from Weber Housing Authority. We've received a grant for the ice sheet to do some preparations for a potential Olympic bid. We've received some grants for the Justice Assistance from the Health Department. So you'll see a bunch of different grants up there. So the revenues and the expenses basically are wash. We're receiving the grant money and then we're asking for permission to spend it. As we move down a little bit, you'll see a COVID other.
Hold on just a second, Scott.
go ahead.
So Commissioner Ford, can you open up your, because mine won't open up.
See if I can get it open.
I just tried mine here again, and it's not pulling
Yep,
up, but
I
I
got
have the
one.
off the
Yep.
most recent agenda.
Yeah, so how'd you do that?
So you just hit,
Just under calendar year where it said right there?
yeah, just hit that.
Yeah, that's
Didn't
what I
open.
did. Yeah, hit open. Bingo.
You got a bad system.
Hold on,
You want to get a hard copy there,
we got one right here.
Stace?
Okay, thank you. All right, Stacy just provided me a hard copy.
You have it in front of you now?
So, Commissioner Harvey, do you want one?
That'd be great, because mine's still not pulling up.
You only had one copy?
That's okay.
You want to come sit next to me and we rub
Ah,
shoulders?
nah,
Put your mask on.
I'm feeling really good about where I'm at right now. No, it's okay. We talked a lot
Okay.
about this, Scott.
We
We've
have
been over
talked a
this the
lot
last
about it,
2 or
and I
3
just want to
times,
see it as
so
we go through. I'm
This
sorry,
is just
Scott.
formalizing what we've talked about.
Yeah, so just a quick
Point out any changes, if you would.
I
please.
will, but just a quick note on the process. Every one of these budget changes goes before all 3 commissioners, and as soon as I get 2 signatures on them, then I add them to this list. So every one of these changes have been vetted and approved by at least 2 commissioners. In many cases, all 3 of you sign off on them, but I only need 2. Okay, so now we're at that second section, COVID other, $1 million. So what that is kind of just a placeholder. We put that in the budget before we knew that we were going to get a bunch of CARES Act money from the state. And what this is just basically a placeholder in case the health department needs additional funds to deal with COVID. We have it in our budget to send to them. If they don't need it, we're not going to send it. If they get other grants that they can use to pay for it, they'll use those other grants first. This is kind of like last and worst case scenario. If they need some additional money, we're putting it aside in our budget right now out of our fund balance, kind of as an emergency reserve. If they need it, they can tap into it. I don't anticipate that they'll need a ton of that money, but we're putting it aside $1 million just in case. All right, that next section, prior year rollover. So what these are projects that were started in 2019. They were approved in the 2019 budget, and they just did not get completed before the end of the year. And so what we're asking is to roll over that money to allow us to continue to complete those projects in 2020. And now you've seen all these, and actually a lot of these projects have already been completed. Normally we would have asked for this budget change to be done in the first quarter, and we had it on the plans to do so, but then we had COVID hit and canceled some of the meetings for a while, and now we lumped it onto this budget change. So that's why you're seeing those now. Some of the other changes that we've done, North Ogden funding, we decided to change the scope of that a little bit, and we're rolling over $1.1 million to finish that project. So that was budgeted in prior years, and we're just rolling that over to this year. We've had some adjustments to our building inspectors. We used to have to contract out a lot and hire contracted labor at a high rate. So we're going to hire an additional employee to help us cover those services, and then we'll receive the revenues, keep the revenues to pay for that employee. We also had to deal with the fact that we lost our inmate labor out at the transfer station, and so there is a request in here to add 4 additional FTEs to the transfer station, the spotter operators, so that they can do the work that were formerly being done by the inmates that now can't come out because of the COVID-related issues. And then on that next page, you'll just see some others, and these are just various miscellaneous adjustments. So you'll see we had an Eden fuel tank system for $186,000. That's mandated by the state. There really wasn't much we could do about that. We had to pull out a fuel tank and put in a new one. And they're helping to pay for a portion of that, but that's our share of it. Some additions to the Eden radio tower, contribution to the Weber Housing Authority. That was from our restricted housing dollars, but we gave them $270,000, and they're using that to help purchase property and do some other things to help with affordable housing. And then we are selling and buying a new roads department loader. So we're going to sell the old piece of equipment, and we're going to buy a new piece of equipment with those proceeds. So unless you have any specific questions, Commissioners, I'll present to you for your consideration these changes to the operating and capital budgets for the year.
Thank you, Scott. Questions, Commissioners, on any of those items?
I do have.
Go ahead.
So Scott, the Housing Authority, I do recall the RDA funds that we decided to put in there. I was thinking they were 200,000, not 270. Did we add to that the purchase, or is this is not the home that they just built? This is simply the purchase of that property.
No, this was the first home, and then I believe also did this include the 2 or 3 lots? 3 lots, I believe.
So we gave them, I believe, $15,000 per lot, and then
Right.
so this is actually a sum of a couple of different
Yeah, that's-
changes that we gave to them. It
okay.
wasn't just one
So
270.
this
it
was
the
the 3
200,000
lots
and
that we gave them. It was 15,000 each,
Right.
correct? And then it was 200. The difference would have been for that first home that's now complete.
Okay,
The
got
20,
it.
25.
I do recall it that way.
Yep.
Yep.
You must have explained this to them others, not me, because I don't remember going through this in this detail.
So you received that individual budget form that I always come over and have you sign. That's what these
Okay.
are. So this is a summation of
And
all
I
those.
signed that?
I can go back and look to see if you signed that specific one, but we do have 2 signatures on each. So I know at
Okay.
least 2 of you signed off on it.
I'm not going to vote yes for it then, because I don't think I signed to it. No, I'm kidding. That's okay. Sounds good. And thank you. Appreciate the explanation.
Help.
Commissioner Harvey, any questions?
I don't. I don't. I remember the changes along the way and the detail. Thank you.
Yeah, we appreciate your diligence on these and making sure that we have all the proper numbers in front of us. This is one of the biggest jobs that the county has, is maintaining these budgets and making sure these expenditures and the revenues are accounted for. I just might mention on the CARES Act funding, which is a major item there, 11.3 million. As of last night, we figured we had a little over, maybe a little under 8 million that will go in the hands of small business and businesses here in the next 10 to 14 days, so in the next couple of weeks.
Yep.
So I just wanted to make sure the public understands is this is a direct pass-through to our businesses. First, to those businesses that were forced to shut down by government mandate. And second, the businesses that had an impact, which there's a number out there that had a revenue loss due to COVID-19. So it was our intent, and the commissioners, as we got together and discussed this, made the decision that Weber County, even though we do have some losses that will need to be made up at some point in time, we're going to be last to take those funds. We want our businesses to have the opportunity to put these funds back in to their operations to make these businesses profitable. So again, I want to give thanks to my fellow commissioners for their foresight and making sure that we take care of these businesses first, because really they're the lifeblood of our county, and let us do what we want to do by the way of property tax and sales tax. So additional questions, commissioners?
I would like to make a comment.
Go ahead.
And that is, this becomes very complicated when you look at the total dollars. I mean, this sounds pretty good that we are where we are today, but we're just barely getting through the first round, and we know there's going to be a second round and a third round, and the total dollars is going to be well, over $45 million, close to $50 million, by the time we're done. And to allocate those kind of funds correctly with full accountability is not an easy process. And I know these gals and guys, there have been a couple guys in there that are doing this, or in the light room right next to my office there. And I walk by all the time and watch them in there. And the two that are really leading it is Brooke and Linnell. And it's interesting to watch those two, how they do this, and the effort and the time they're putting into it, and their pride. I was talking to Linnell the other day, and or Brooke, it was actually Brooke I was talking to, and she says, this has been a lot of fun, but it's been very challenging. And so they're up for a challenge, and it's kind of cool to watch them do all this. I'm just way impressed. Once more, one more thing that we can give the Weaver County employees an attaboy over. It's amazing to watch it. And this come out of nowhere. It was not like it was planned.
No, absolutely it wasn't. And as I mentioned before, we've had counties to the south of us, not to mention anybody like Utah County, but it was to the south, that actually went out and hired a third-party company at the tune of over $150,000 is what I've been told, which I suspect is a good number, to do the same thing we did internally in our design build in a little under 2 weeks. So this was done amazingly for $150,000. I think we actually, if we look at the numbers, have done a better job than that third party. Now, again, we're not, as Commissioner Jenkins said, we're not done yet. We now have a design build for this next tranche of money, which is going to be a little different group. We're going to try to bring some additional sources that would be available, i.e. hospitals, et cetera, and nonprofits to the table at this point in time. So this is really a revision of that plan and that design that we had 2 weeks ago that we now have to redesign. So, and I know that our team's up to the task. I'm looking forward to it. Thank you very much. Anything additional for Scott?
No, you did a good job. Thanks, Scott. And I also want to appreciate Ricky and our treasurer, John Bond, and
Oh, yeah.
and you know, Scott, you've been involved in there quite heavily and just done a great job. I mean, it's been a team effort. You guys have worked very late into many evenings to make sure that deadlines are done. And the fact that we're to a public hearing today, motioning when we just received the funds, what, 4 weeks ago? And now we're finalizing or formalizing this so that we're making sure that everything is accurate. We're being very responsible with what's come our way. I'm just being right here in the same room and watching just the talent is just, we're lucky. You guys are great. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we need to mention Chris Crockett in that with John Bond and Scott.
Oh, yeah.
Chris was involved with those initial meetings to make sure that, you know, a lot of us had ideas. Let's get this money out. And,
The hammer.
you know, Chris reminded us very artfully that maybe we shouldn't do that in that way and kept us on track from a legal standpoint. So sometimes we didn't want to hear it, but we always appreciate it because it's usually very correct. We appreciate you keeping the best interest of the county in mind. Thanks, Chris. All right, with that, Commissioners, let's move on to any additional questions on that item before we move on. All right, let's go to the next item on the public hearing, which is to discuss and take action on a proposal to amend the zoning code for CV1 and CV2 zones of the Ogden Valley to reduce the front yard setback, including complete street design, and add sections for building maintenance, contract, and cross easements, access easements. Felix. No, that's not Felix. Charlie, you're up.
Not quite as fun to look at as Felix is, but I'm here. Forgive me for a second while I get this open. So, Commissioners, thank you. This in your packet and an additional handout that's been recently handed out to you in this meeting is this ordinance you see on the screen right now. Right now, it's just got a temporary number. If you were to act on it today, you'd give it a formal number. And what it does is it changes the CV1 and the CV2 zones. Right now, the CV1 zone and the CV2 zone, they both have a front yard setback that's away from the public right-of-way. They also have a side yard setback that's away from the property line. In these two CV zones, CV standing for Commercial Valley, so these are the commercial zones that apply to the Ogden Valley. If we are looking to implement the Ogden Valley General Plan, should be looking to have opportunities in our codes for these buildings to be brought to the property lines, both side and front, and even to the rear in certain circumstances. And so we, as staff, took the initiative to bring this to you guys as a possible proposal to make that happen. This is a baby step towards implementing an ordinance that will create villages as prescribed by the Ogden Valley General Plan. It's kind of a Band-Aid for now until we get that more formalized ordinance in front of you guys for full consideration. As we looked at this, there was a few things that we noticed in the CV1 and CV2 zone that were a little bit concerning to the idea of creating commercial storefronts along these rights-of-way, one of which being parking facilities. So we do know as we move forward that we're going to want to see some on-street parking. Kind of think of a mini 25th Street, or if you've driven down the new Main Street, well, it was new, I guess, 10 years ago, of Colville, or even of Helper City. I mean, we're envisioning small town feel like that, where they have done full rejuvenation of those rights-of-way and essentially enhanced those village areas using the buildings themselves, essentially at the front setback, or excuse me, at the front property line, as the framing of that public right-of-way. And so the rest of the parking needs to go somewhere, and we're hoping we can see it go internal, inside of those blocks. So you drive down a wide enough alleyway for two-way travel, and you get into behind the buildings where property owners are sharing along property boundaries parking area for that specific kind of block. And I've got a graphic if you want to see it at some point in this conversation. So that's one of the things we wanted to look at. Looking at something like that, you need to look at perpetual maintenance agreements. Just essentially not the county entering into any kind of agreement with the landowners entering into agreements with each other. So we'd have cross-access easements recorded with the properties that obligate them to each other when it comes to operation and maintenance of these parking facilities, internal block parking facilities. The other thing we looked at is when you bring a building to a side setback line and a rear setback line, you can have impact on your neighboring property owner. And so we'd want to look at the opportunity for that neighboring property owner to get some kind of a maintenance agreement or easement, at least to have a say in whether or not that building should go right on that setback line. If the neighboring property owner won't acquiesce to a property agreement or a boundary agreement there, then the setback would be 10 feet up from the side and the rear on that. So those are the main tweaks that you'll see in here. The difference between what you saw yesterday when we talked about this in work session and what you see highlighted in yellow today is we were able to get it formally reviewed by legal, and we just made a few grammatical tweaks and clerical tweaks to make it say what it's supposed to say. Any questions for me?
Perfect. Questions for Charlie?
Questions? I do have.
Go ahead.
So on page 10, on complete street, item C, under subset 1B, you have in there a 10-foot sidewalk is required. A portion of the lot's frontage in CV1 or CV2 zone where a complete street is not required. Now, we didn't go over that, so this is something I'm not familiar with. Can you explain that to me?
Yeah, a little bit different here. So when you're looking at one, so complete street C1 and then A and B, what that essentially says is for the completed improvements of your development, you need to have a complete street. So let's say you've got a 20-acre lot, very wide frontage, but you're only doing 100 feet of frontage. You don't have to go all the way down to the end of that property. Unless you are more than a certain percentage of that frontage, then you might as well get that extra 25% done. When you get down to part B there, that if there's a portion of your frontage, say it's a 20-acre lot, or it's let's just say it's 200 feet wide, your lot is, and you've only improved 100 feet. The vacant portion that we're not requiring a full complete street, which would mean asphalt all the way up to where your rolled curb is going to be, and then almost 20 feet in these 100-foot wide rights-of-way, hardscape, where you're going to have trees and whatnot in there. You don't have to do all that. Just a 10-foot, it's essentially a gap stop. So you're not developing that extra 100 feet, but at some point in time, we expect it will happen. And so it gets you from a 20-foot wide pedestrian essentially boulevard on that sidewalk area,
Okay.
through 10 feet, and then to the next development down.
I see that there where it says a complete street is not required.
Right.
Okay, it makes sense now that you describe that. Explain it.
And if there are other ways that we can write it to be clear, we actually, you see it's
Well,
highlighted, we
just-
tweaked it a little bit to
You know,
try and,
This portion right here I've only seen for all of 10 seconds,
Right.
10 minutes here.
and we're more than happy
And
if
we
you
didn't
want
go over
to.
that in detail, that
didn't.
portion of it, and that's why I picked up on it when I was reading it.
Yeah, we can, if you're more comfortable getting through all the details on this and going to another meeting, we can do that
I'm
too.
just fine, that's
Okay.
just fine. That was just, everything else in here made a fair amount of sense as quick as I read it, and I read it pretty quick. But that part we didn't go over, and so that's why it
Perfect.
went up.
Good question.
Okay.
Commissioner Harvey, questions?
No, most of it made sense when your explanation, and I'm not savvy enough like Commissioner Jenkins. He's
Well, I can say Harvey's a little more smart than I am. He picks things up. I'm kind of slow. Jeez.
All right, any additional questions,
done.
comments? Charlie, I want to give you and Rick and your staff kudos for this. I think this really is heading us in the right direction for planning. And what this does, it really puts the builder / developer owner of that property, gives them a lot more flexibility. Rather than design a building around what we think, they have the ability to come to us. And if they want frontage on that street, so it's more like a 25th Street, or as you mentioned, or if they want to push it back, and it allows them to work with their neighbors on either side, on side yards. So we have, in downtown Ogden, we have common wall agreements, we have cross easements, just the nature of the business. And if you're going to have a thriving commercial district, which this is not right now in Ogden Valley, but sooner or later it may be, hopefully it will be, this gives the owner, builder, operator the opportunity to say, this is really what the market demands, not what government is requesting.
Right.
And they don't have to fit into our model. We give them the flexibility with those guidelines. So,
Absolutely. It gives that toolkit for them to use.
yeah, so anyway, I think this is heading in the right direction.
Thank you. And Felix right here behind me, he's been instrumental in getting this done too. So definitely a team effort here.
Yeah, Felix, great job. Okay, commissioners, ready? Well, we're not taking motions yet, sorry.
Yeah, so I would like to comment on it.
Go ahead.
I asked the question, but I feel the same way as Commissioner Four. When you look at Old Town Eden and New Town Eden and what they're trying to do and the things they're trying to create, this will allow them in the Old Town Eden to create a very different feel than in other areas.
Right.
And I'm excited about it. I think this is going to create something very special up there, or at least give them the opportunity to if they want to. And I'm very much in favor of it as well. So I'm excited about this. I think these is creative, and I appreciate you guys trying to be a little creative and working up there. So thank you, Charlie, and
You bet.
Rick,
Happy to do
and
so.
all the
We've
folks.
got
Felix,
two
those
landowners.
who've worked.
We got two. Sorry about that. We've got two landowners we're working with right now who are going right down the path you're talking about.
Really? Good.
Just volunteering to work right down this channel. It's wonderful.
That's great to hear. Okay, does that conclude your presentation, Charlie?
That does for that subject.
Okay, let's go on. I think you're still up. Application initiated proposal to amend the Weber County Code 104-7 through 108-7 to allow the cultivation and processing of cannabis cultivation in the A2 zones, provided compliance with specific standards. Those standards were basically set by us earlier in the year, as I recall, as we looked at the A3 zone.
That's right.
Is that correct?
That is absolutely right. So we did add one or two more standards to apply to the A2 zone in your proposal that you see here. And when I say we, working with the applicants on that and with the Planning Commission, I don't have the ordinance right here. I apparently downloaded the wrong document to my thumb drive. But just to be brief on essentially what you're looking at here, the request is to turn or to modify the ordinance in the A2 zone to allow for cannabis cultivation. So we're not talking about processing, we're not talking about testing, we're not talking about the big, heavy industrial operations. We're talking about essentially growing. We're talking about agriculture here. The state code essentially puts some really heavy standards on cannabis cultivation, on cannabis establishments in general. And so there isn't a ton that we need to really get into on the regulatory side. I think the state has a really good handle on that. There is one element in the state code there, if you've got a small enough of a crop, you can grow outside. We have actually put that in the ordinance as one of the standards, saying you can't, you just got to be inside, it's got to be secured, it's got to be set back from your property line at least 100 feet, it's got to be on a parcel that's at least 20 acres. And so it kind of is limiting in its ability for anyone to take the opportunity. It's serious people, but also to get a license like this from the state of Utah, you're putting tens of thousands of dollars to even get a license from the state of Utah. And so one of the concerns that fleshed out with the Planning Commission was, well, gosh, what if this just pops up everywhere? It's not going to happen. You've got to have very serious people who have the financial backing behind them and the know-how to get into this industry just to meet the state regulations. So, any questions on that?
Commissioners, I know we've talked about this prior to.
I do have a question, several questions. Okay, so I told you the other day my feelings about making sure that there were proper setbacks on this, and that the smell that was related to this was dealt with. And you've done that, and I appreciate that.
You bet.
And according to the state of Utah, we have to have an area that we approve this. So in my thinking about this the other night, we now will comply. How do we let people know that we're not going to approve a second one, or a third one, or a fifth one? Because I don't want to be a county of marijuana producing. I want to have a marijuana unit approved to comply with state code, and that's it.
Well, I think the answer to that really is it comes to the question right here in front of you. If you're willing to allow it in more zones than even the A2 zone, that will have to come back to you as a formal request to amend your ordinance.
Yeah, but I don't have a problem approving it changing it in an A2 zone to allow it. But if we allow it in an A2 zone like this, it's now an approved use, and we have to have a pretty good reason to not approve it for the neighbors to come in and approve it there too.
That's absolutely right.
And without that, if we just leave it at this, that doesn't work.
That's right. So one of the things we discussed with the Planning Commission to try and minimize that concern is to require a large amount of acreage. So one of the drafts that you guys haven't seen is a minimum requirement of 50 acres. Another draft, we took it up to 75 acres. Those acreages still work with the applicant. They still have enough acreages to make it work for their property. At the end of the day, the planning commissioners, when they moved forward a positive recommendation, they brought it back down to 20, which it was already listed at 20 in the A3 zone. So they said, let's just stick with 20 like we did in the A3 zone because we're not super concerned. It's only cultivation. That was essentially their discussion and findings. If there's new concern here, we can go back up to 50 acres or 75 acres, and I can make those tweaks in that ordinance.
Well, we could, but out in that area out there, there's probably 30 or 40 people that have got 100 acres. In fact, there might be 100 people that have 100 acres out there. I don't really know, but there's lots.
So I did run an analysis of acreages that are out there. It's actually less than you might think. There are a few people that have a lot of acreage, that's for sure. I can actually get you those numbers. I don't recall what they are off the top of my head. But there are more than just one, that's for sure.
I wish Mr. Crockett hadn't just walked out of here, because this is a question I would like to run by him. Because I realize that according to state code that we're required to have a site in our county, but they just they didn't say anything about how many sites or anything like that. And I would like to restrict this now.
Well, the state has basically made provisions for X number of licenses, and I don't know I know they started off with like 12 or so. My understanding is, so before they could come to us for any approval, they'd have to get a license.
That's right.
And those licenses, to my understanding, they're full right now. And from what I've been told by Department of Ag, there's no intentions of expanding those because, number one, they don't want to infringe upon the profitability of those companies. Now, again, that could be expanded by the legislature at any point in time. But this is not something that somebody could just walk in and decide they want it. They have to have a license first.
Right.
And those licenses are basically gone.
And I do understand that, but we could have, in theory, and I don't want to be ridiculous here, but we could very well, you know, this is an area out here that produces ag very well. We could very well go from 1 to 3 growers just like that. I wouldn't say 6 or 8, assuming we'd take on half the state's production. But I really wouldn't be too surprised if we had 2 or 3.
Possibility, if the licenses became available.
If licenses came available, if I was a large landowner out there and this pays a whole lot more than corn pays. And so, you know, I could absolutely see put myself in a position where you could raise that. Now, the people that have applied for this are greenhouse operators, and frankly, for them, this is about as perfect of a circumstance as you could have. So I'm actually excited to do this because it fulfills our responsibility in the state code. All right. Well, I just want to say H4, I'm not ready to vote on today. I would like to explore this a little more. But we are having the public hearing. But H2 and 3, I am ready to vote on today.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, the applicant. Oh,
Yeah, go ahead.
sorry. Go ahead.
So is there a possibility, Charlie, you know, you talked about this zoning. Could we have an A2C zone or a A2Q, it doesn't really matter, where we, so that, you know, I want to be sensitive to Commissioner Jenkins, what he said, but also sensitive to future commissions, so we don't bind them or obligate them to, if more licenses are issued, you know, that we've made a decision. So if we had an A2C, and I'm going to just call that C for cannabis.
Okay.
Where it described those things that you talked about, and then in our code, then it described in the code that we have X number or only one or whatever that is in that code, and then whoever applies for that code first and gets it, or can show. I mean, I probably don't understand what I'm saying here. That's just another possibility. Is that? Can you speak to that just briefly, and then?
Absolutely. So you recall from last year we adopted a solar overlay zone. We weren't quite sure exactly how we wanted to allow for these huge solar companies to move in, and we didn't want essentially the market to tip the scales to flee agriculture and fill everything up with solar. Right. And so we just created a zone for a very serious solar company. We could certainly do an overlay zone for cannabis. I have discussed these options with the applicant. We even discussed the opportunity just to rezone their property to the A3 zone. I mean, a lot of the operations happening on the property are A3 type operations anyway. They are 2 parcels away from the A3 zone. So if we were going to grab them with the A3, we'd have to take a couple other parcels too, which if you go from A2 to A3, you're actually pulling out development rights for residential. Because the A3 zone requires 2 acres per residence, where the A2 requires 1. And so we talked about all the different options and the obstacles that could come into play from a policy perspective and from a political perspective. The other side of it is if you put a polygon on a map that says this is our cannabis zone, the applicant had some concerns about being that identifiable. I mean, they're going to have a lot of security as it is. And we talked about going to requiring a conditional use permit, but even those require notice to the neighbors within a certain distance and addresses to go up on noticing. And so put all that together, and there was concern about security.
Makes sense. Okay, additional questions or comments for Charlie? Is that
Mr. Chairman, we
conclude
do
your presentation?
it does. We do have the applicant in the room who probably would like to address you if you're comfortable doing so.
Yeah, so we do.
Before we get there.
Yeah, go ahead.
You know, Charlie, I think Commissioner Harvey's come up with a really good idea here. I realize that these folks don't necessarily want to be identifiable, but that's going to happen any way you go at it. I mean, everybody's going to know this, so I don't really worry about that so much. But the idea of having a subset of an A2 zone, where it was an A2C, or frankly, a conditional use permit. I didn't really think about that. That's actually proper too. Have a conditional use permit, and that gives us grounds to argue we only want one in the county.
Absolutely.
And I didn't really think about, I'm not sure it needs to be part of the zoning, it just needs to be part of the condition. And we can certainly put this under a conditional use, and that solves the issue all the way.
You're saying just make it a conditional use?
Right. And then, but appropriate in the zone. So that is still, to make the zone change is still appropriate, and just make it a conditional use. And then that simply says we've made the condition once, we're not going to do it again, or
whatever.
Or if there's a second applicant, if this works out great, then it would have to run the full gamut again and be approved under a conditional use for a second one. Right. And I really like that. That puts the pressure on us as a commission and on our planning.
Well, I'm trying to safeguard against future commissions as well. You know, this will be an item that'll be talked about for decades, and so.
Well, this will put the pressure on future commissions. Yeah. And we don't
doesn't
want to
tie their
necessarily
hands
take
either.
the pressure off of them, but it doesn't bind their hands.
That's where I'm
So
going.
I really like the idea of putting this under a conditional use.
If I could say
that makes a lot of sense.
If I could say a couple of words about that. Conditional uses right now are approvable or approved by the Planning Commission, so it wouldn't come back to you guys for review. It wouldn't come back to you guys for essentially accountability review. Might I suggest that the ordinance that you have in front of you, rather than doing a conditional use or a conditional overlay zone, we change the ordinance that you have right here to say no more than one operation in the A2 zone. First come, first serve. That way, if a second one comes in, they have to come through this same process and ask no more than 2, no more than 3, and maybe that we keep that governance that way, so they have to continue to come and change the ordinance.
Okay, so we'd have to change the ordinance to approve the second operation.
Right.
So that serves the same purpose as a conditional use, other than it comes to this,
Comes
rather
to
than
you
the Planning
guys.
Commission, which I
Correct.
actually like better.
I do too. I do too.
Yeah.
Charlie, you may want to make a motion that it's very difficult to deny a conditional use.
Yeah, that's a really good point, and something I didn't emphasize. Conditional use permits, the state code says they're essentially approved permits. They're approved use permits. It's very hard to deny. The only way to deny it is if you cannot mitigate the effects. And mitigate doesn't mean eliminate, it means make less severe.
Yeah, Commissioner Jenkins, I think if I understand where your concern is, the proper thing to do to limit it would be to change this ordinance to no more than 1, and then they could always come in and ask for a change in the ordinance to 2 or whatever.
Right.
I wish I had that right here on the monitor. I could show you exactly where it could go, but if you're looking in Title 104 where it adds medical cannabis establishment, cultivation only, it's just an extra sentence at the end of that that says limited to 1 permit for the entire A2 zone at this time.
So we could modify that today.
You could.
Okay.
Yeah.
There you
Just
go.
Tell me how to type it.
Okay, I think we know where we're going.
Okay. Easy. Legislating from the bench. I like it.
Reading between the lines here.
We did that all the time in the legislature.
That's right.
It's called changing law on the move.
That's right.
That's why we always do things correctly down there, Commissioner Harvey. Okay, Commissioner Harvey, questions? I can see you.
Got no more questions. Enjoyed the discussion till the last part.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Does that conclude your presentation?
That does. Thank you.
Thank you. Great discussion. Let's now go to public comments. Anyone that would like to talk about any of the 3 proposed action items, please come forward. We would love to hear your comments now, or anybody that's online Zoom. Stacy? Doesn't appear that's a no. Please come forward. Just give us your name and city you're from. We don't need your address.
Thank you. My name is Seth Gom. I'm an attorney for Spalding Law out of Pleasant Grove, Utah. As a firm, we have about 10,000 billable hours in this industry, and we're a Utah law firm, which is pretty amazing and rare. I've had the honor and opportunity to work with a lot of cities and counties in helping them draft their ordinances, educate them about this new law. And I'm also a stakeholder in Zion Pharmaceuticals, which is the applicant seeking for cultivation in the A2 zone. You know, it's important to us, we're one of the few Utah companies that were awarded a license. There was only 8 licenses awarded. Each one can only cultivate up to 100,000 square feet. And if you think about that, that's 4 or 5 acres each. So if you were to take everyone and combine them all into Weber County, you'd be looking at 40 acres to get everyone in there. These are very small operations. We love working with Utah farmers because they're established here. They know how the system works. They share our same values. And in this situation, we're talking about an 83-acre site that has 1 million square feet of greenhouse. And so even if we were to maximize that single license, we're only using 1/10 of the greenhouse space that's on that site. So we think that's a great strategy for safety, to be responsible and excuse me, secure in everything that we're doing there. You know, one thing I would point out is that medical marijuana is virtually identical to industrial hemp. And there's industrial hemp all over the place. It smells the same, looks the same. The only thing that you can do to tell the difference is to actually have a lab test and check its presence of THC. That use is already going on throughout the county. It's going on in this parcel. And so the neighbors wouldn't know any different from everything else that's happening there because that cousin that has those same odors and everything else is already there. And of course, the ordinance covers odor already. We're required to scrub that, make sure that that is not a nuisance at all. The state statute is very stringent on security on their inspections. They have to inspect again and again. This is by far the most secure and cleanest agricultural product you'll see in the state based on that regulation. This facility in particular employs 185 people in this county. This will increase more opportunity that way. You know, as I get to see all of the data that comes from the Utah Department of Health, Weber County is in the top 3 counties of patients that have cards. And this is a great alternative to opiate problems and other things that doctors have to turn to and people end up relying upon to get their medicinal relief. And this doesn't have that life-threatening risk that those other alternatives have. So I think that you'd be really serving your county well and your constituents in allowing that opportunity to be within your county. Again, I have a lot of knowledge about the statute and about this industry. I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you. Questions for the you're the applicant, I'm assuming.
That's right.
Okay. Questions, commissioners? Anything? Great. Okay. Appreciate that. So let me just before you go, I'm assuming you're the first, so you probably wouldn't have any concerns if we were to limit this as a first come, first serve, or the next one would have to make an application and petition the body.
Certainly with respect to our interest, we don't have any complaint against that. I understand the need to balance policy in the county. Right. The Planning Commission did an outstanding job. We had 2 hearings with them where we refined that and really checked into those concerns that they had, and that was one of them. And so I respect your decision that way, however that may go.
Great. Thank you. And you're in operation now, or you hope to be in operation?
We are in operation now. We actually have a facility in Salt Lake County that's temporary. Okay. And then we have another facility in southern Utah County for cultivation. We have a processing center in Salt Lake County, and then this would be another cultivation center. Under the latest changes of the law, each applicant can have up to 2 facilities, but no more than that 100,000 square feet.
This one would be a what plant again?
I'm sorry?
A grower's.
A
grower. This is
not the,
cultivation
not the
only.
process,
Yeah.
and so the smell isn't with this one.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, this is cultivation only. The only thing that's done here is straight harvesting, and anything that's done with the plant is done in a different facility in Salt Lake County.
Yeah.
So you really shouldn't have an odor, smell issue.
You wouldn't know any different than today.
Yeah, got it. That's
Great.
kind of my understanding as well. Okay, thank you very much for being with us.
Yep, my pleasure. Thank you.
Anybody else that would like to come forward and talk make any public comments regarding H2, H3, or H4? All right, seeing none, I would take a motion to adjourn our public hearing and reconvene as a public meeting.
So moved.
We have a motion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Votes aye. We're now back to a public meeting, and let's take action now on the public hearing that we just concluded. So let's start with, would be Resolution 22, dealing with the approval of a resolution amending the operating and capital budgets of Weber County for the 2020 calendar year that was presented by Mr. Scott Park.
Mr. Chair, after hearing the presentation by Mr. Park, I'll make a motion that we approve that resolution on the operating and capital budget for the 2020 calendar year for Weber County.
Thank you. We have a motion to approve.
Second.
And we have a second. All those in favor say aye.
It's a
Oh,
resolution.
excuse me, resolution. Sorry.
Commissioner Harvey?
Aye.
Commissioner Jenkins?
Aye.
Chair Farrar?
Aye. Thank you. Thank you for that reminder. Okay, let's go to resolution on ordinance. What is this? 13. Or excuse me, 11. Is that correct? And it would be the Ogden Valley action on the zoning code for the CV1 and CV2 zones of the Ogden Valley to reduce the front yard setback, including complete street design, and add sections for building maintenance, contract, and cross easement. Do we have a motion on that ordinance?
I'd make a motion that we approve ordinance 11, which is H3 Ogden Valley, CV1 and CV2, and the description as you just read it.
Thank you. And we had a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
And we have a second.
Commissioner Harvey?
Aye.
Commissioner Jenkins?
Aye.
Chair Farrar?
Aye, thank you. Final action item on H4, ordinance 12, action on a proposal to amend Weber County Code 104-7 and 108-7 to allow the cultivation and processing of cannabis cultivation in the A2 zones provided compliance with specific standard.
Mr. Chair, with the discussion that we had in the public meeting, I'll make a motion that we approve that 104-7 and 108-7, but to include the language of no more than one, so that specifically addresses the concerns and out of respect for Commissioner Jenkins' comments there.
Okay.
And that would be no more than one in the county.
Okay?
Okay. And not in the zone, in the county. Great. And I will second that.
Okay, we have a motion, a second.
Okay, ready for a motion? For a roll call. Commissioner Harvey?
Aye.
Commissioner Jenkins?
Aye.
Chair Farrar?
Aye, thank you.
Great.
Okay, motion carries. Thank you very much. Commissioner comments. This meeting went a little longer than I anticipated, but it was a great discussion. We're about ready to start one in about 30 minutes, that maybe even a funner discussion. So, final comments. You're going to have plenty of opportunity to talk tonight as well.
I would say I'm very pleased with what happened today. We've done good things, and I'm pleased with the little road trip that we took this morning to go up and see what happens. We've got a lot happening in the Upper Valley right now.
We do.
And it's really interesting to see what's taking place. Well, we've got a lot happening all over, not just the Upper Valley, even out in the West.
All over.
Yeah, so it's good to be here.
It was good. Commissioner Harvey.
No, thank you.
Thank you. And, yeah, it was a great road trip. We were, you know, I offered a Jeep ride on the dirt trail,
Oh,
but
for heaven's sake.
it turned out that, you know, just as a word of advice, if you have a car that runs on the internet, you probably should stay close to the internet.
That is the truth, isn't it?
With that,
Oh, my. With that, I'd make a motion to adjourn.
do we have a second?
Second.
All right. All those in favor say aye. Non-debatable. Motion carries. Thank you.